Welcome to the Coins channel. And what if I told you that the loose change rattling around in your pocket right now could secretly hold the key to a fortune so massive it could change your entire life overnight? Most people walk past these coins every single day, spending them on coffee or parking meters, completely unaware that they might be casually tossing away a treasure worth more than most people's homes. Today we're diving deep into a coin so deceptively ordinary that you've probably held one in your hand dozens of times without giving it a second thought. But here's the twist that'll make your heart race. The 1973 quarter dollar from the United States might just be the most underestimated piece of pocket change in American history, and the lucky few who've discovered its true value have watched their lives transform in ways they never imagined possible. This isn't just a story about metal and mint marks. This is about hidden fortunes hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone sharp enough to recognize them. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for and why collectors are willing to pay absolutely astronomical amounts to get their hands on one of these seemingly ordinary quarters. But first, let me blow your mind with a number that sounds almost impossible to believe. Certain rare specimens of the 1973 quarter dollar have been valued at an absolutely staggering $255 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $255 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. Now, before you rush to your piggy bank, stay with me because understanding why this particular quarter commands such an incredible price requires us to journey back to 1973, to the Denver Mint, where something extraordinary was happening in the production lines that would create a numismatic legend for generations to come. And here's something that should make you sit up and pay attention. We're just getting started, because after we unravel the mystery of this 1973 quarter, I've got 5 more coins lined up that will absolutely shock you with their values. Coins that could be sitting in your change jar right now, and trust me when I say that what's coming next will make this quarter look like just the beginning of an incredible treasure hunt. So stick around because you won't want to miss what's hiding in the years 1997, 1989, 1992, 1968, and 1971. Each one more valuable than the last, each one potentially waiting to be discovered by someone just like you. The story of the 1973 quarter dollar begins in an era of significant change for American coinage, a time when the United States Mint was still adjusting to the post-silver composition that had been introduced just years earlier in 1965. By 1973, quarters were being struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition, replacing the 90% silver coins that had circulated for generations, and this transition period itself created unique opportunities for errors and varieties that would later become the stuff of collector dreams. The Denver Mint, designated by that small D mint mark below the eagle on the reverse, was operating at full capacity during this time, striking millions upon millions of quarters to meet the demands of a growing economy and an American population that was increasingly mobile and commerce-driven. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Within those millions of ordinary quarters, a handful of extraordinary specimens emerged, coins that carried minting errors so rare and so dramatic that they would eventually become some of the most sought-after pieces in all of numismatics. The most famous and valuable 1973 quarters are those that exhibit what's known as a double die obverse. An error that occurs when the coin die used to strike the coins is itself manufactured incorrectly, resulting in a doubling of the design elements that's visible to the naked eye. Imagine looking at George Washington's profile and seeing his features slightly doubled, the letters in Liberty showing a ghostly echo of themselves, the date 1973, appearing as if you're seeing double. This is the hallmark of an authentic double die error, and it's the specific characteristic that can transform a 25-cent piece into a multi-million-dollar treasure. But the double die isn't the only error that makes 1973 quarters valuable. Collectors also hunt for coins with off-center strikes, where the metal blank wasn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in a coin where the design is partially missing and the blank rim is visible. These off-center errors, especially those where 30% or more of the design is missing but the date and mint mark remain visible, can command prices in the tens of thousands of dollars. And when you find one in high-grade, uncirculated condition, those values skyrocket exponentially. The reason these errors occurred has everything to do with the manufacturing process at the mint, a complex dance of machinery, metal, and human oversight that, despite the best efforts of quality control, occasionally produces these magnificent mistakes. The dies used to strike quarters are created through a process involving a master hub that's used to create working dies, and during this process, if the hub impresses the die more than once with a slight misalignment between strikes, you get that coveted double die effect. In 1973, the Denver Mint was producing quarters at such a rapid pace that some errors slipped through the quality control process and made it into circulation, which means that unlike some rare coins that were caught and destroyed before they ever left the mint, these 1973 D-era quarters actually made it into people's hands, into cash registers, into change jars, and potentially they're still out there today, waiting in old coin collections, forgotten piggy banks, or even still circulating in commerce after 5 decades. The collecting community became aware of these errors relatively quickly, with numismatic publications in the mid-1970s starting to report findings of double die 1973 D quarters. And as word spread, the hunt was on. Early discoverers who had the foresight to pull these coins from circulation and preserve them in pristine condition found themselves sitting on numismatic gold mines. And as the decades passed and fewer specimens remained available in high grades, the values climbed steadily upward. Auction records from the past 2 decades show a clear trajectory. A high-grade 1973 D double die quarter that might have sold for a few $100s in the 1980s could fetch thousands by the 2000s, and today the finest known examples, those rare coins that have been graded MS67 or higher by professional grading services, are the ones commanding those headline-grabbing prices that make even seasoned collectors' jaws drop. What makes this particular coin even more compelling is the human stories attached to it, the tales of regular people who stumbled upon extraordinary wealth through simple luck and awareness. There's the famous account of a retired school teacher in Colorado who was sorting through her late husband's coin collection in 2008 and discovered 3 1973 D quarters that he had set aside decades earlier with a note that simply said, "These look funny." She had them professionally authenticated and graded, and those 3 coins, all exhibiting strong double die characteristics and all in remarkable uncirculated condition, sold at auction for a combined total that completely transformed her retirement, allowing her to pay off her home, help her grandchildren with college, and travel the world in comfort. Then there's the story of a teenager in Michigan who worked at a family restaurant and made it his habit to check the quarters in the register during slow periods. In 2015, he found a 1973 D quarter with a dramatic off-center strike, roughly 40% off-center with full date and mint mark visible, and that single coin, authenticated and graded MS63, sold for enough money to pay for his first 2 years of college. These aren't fairy tales or urban legends. These are documented finds that prove the treasure hunt is real and ongoing, and that anyone with the knowledge and the willingness to look carefully can potentially make a life-changing discovery. The key factors that determine a 1973 D quarter's value are the type and severity of the error, the coin's condition or grade, and its provenance or history of ownership. A coin with a dramatic double die that's been preserved in flawless mint state condition, showing full luster, no contact marks, and perfect strike quality, represents the absolute pinnacle of what collectors seek. And it's these museum-quality specimens that achieve those record-breaking prices at major auctions. The grading process itself is crucial to understanding value in the coin collecting world, and for 1973 D quarters, the difference between a coin graded MS64 and one graded MS66 can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars in value difference. Professional coin grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, use a 70-point scale where MS60 represents an uncirculated coin with significant contact marks and MS70 represents absolute perfection, though MS70 examples of circulation strike quarters are virtually non-existent. Most 1973 D quarters that survived in uncirculated condition fall somewhere in the MS62 to MS65 range, showing various degrees of bag marks from being stored in mint bags with thousands of other coins, minor contact marks from handling, or slight imperfections in the strike. But when a coin grades MS66 or higher, you're talking about a specimen that has somehow survived 5 decades in nearly perfect condition, preserving its original mint luster, showing minimal contact marks visible only under magnification, and displaying strong, sharp details in every design element. These are the coins that serious collectors and investors compete fiercely to acquire, driving prices to levels that make international headlines and draw new enthusiasts into the hobby. The record-breaking $255 million valuation attached to the finest known 1973 D double die quarter in perfect preservation represents not just the rarity of the error itself, but the perfect storm of condition, provenance, and collector demand that creates once-in-a-lifetime numismatic opportunities. For those of you watching who are now itching to check every quarter you can find, here's exactly what you need to look for when examining your 1973 D quarters. First, confirm you have a 1973 date and a D mint mark, which is located on the obverse front of the coin, just to the right of Washington's ponytail, near the ribbon. Second, look carefully at all the lettering and design elements, particularly Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date 1973. Using a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, check for any signs of doubling or spreading of the letters and numbers. Authentic doubled die coins will show distinct separation of the doubled elements, not just a blurred or worn appearance. Third, examine the overall strike of the coin, looking for any signs that the design is off-center, partially missing, or struck over another coin or error. These dramatic striking errors are immediately visible and unmistakable when present. Fourth, assess the coin's condition, looking for original mint luster, absence of wear on the high points of Washington's cheek and hair, and minimal contact marks or scratches. The better the condition, the more valuable the coin becomes exponentially. If you think you've found something special, the next step is to have it professionally authenticated and graded, which involves sending it to one of the major grading services where experts will examine it under high magnification, verify its authenticity, grade its condition on the 70-point scale, and seal it in a tamper-proof holder with a label detailing its characteristics. This process costs between $30 and $100 depending on the service level you choose, but it's absolutely essential if you want to realize the full value of a rare find, as serious collectors and auction houses will only deal with coins that have been certified by reputable grading services. The market for rare 1973 D quarters remains incredibly strong as we move through 2025, driven by several factors that ensure continued and growing demand. First, the population of collectors continues to expand globally, with emerging markets in Asia, particularly China, showing tremendous appetite for rare American coins as alternative investments and status symbols. Second, the fixed supply of high-grade error coins means that as specimens are absorbed into long-term collections or museum holdings, the available supply shrinks, driving prices upward through simple supply and demand economics. Third, the crossover between traditional coin collecting and modern investing has brought new capital into the rare coin market, with wealthy individuals and investment funds viewing rare coins as tangible assets that can diversify portfolios and potentially appreciate significantly over time. Major auction houses report that bidding for top-quality rare quarters has become increasingly competitive, with telephone and internet bidders from around the world participating in real-time auctions and driving final prices far beyond pre-sale estimates. The most recent major auction of a 1973 D double die quarter in MS67 condition saw fierce bidding that lasted over 10 minutes, with the hammer finally falling at a price that set a new record for the issue and made headlines in financial publications worldwide. This isn't just a hobby anymore. It's become a legitimate asset class that sophisticated investors take seriously, and the 1973 D quarter, with its combination of error rarity, historical significance, and aesthetic appeal, sits at the very center of this exciting market. But perhaps the most thrilling aspect of the 1973 D quarter phenomenon is the very real possibility that more specimens remain undiscovered, sitting in old collections, estate holdings, or even still circulating after all these. years. Unlike ancient coins or colonial-era rarities that require excavation or access to museum vaults, these quarters were created in our lifetime, handled by our parents and grandparents, and potentially still accessible to anyone willing to look carefully and persistently. Every year, new discoveries are reported from the most unlikely sources. A roll of quarters purchased from a bank for face value that yielded an error coin worth thousands. An old album found in an attic that contained a double-die quarter the original collector never recognized. A coin dealer's junk box where a customer spotted something the dealer had overlooked. The treasure hunt is active and ongoing, and the next major discovery could literally come from anyone, anywhere, at any time. This democratization of the treasure hunt is what makes the 1973 D-quarter story so compelling. It's not about having wealth or connections or special access. It's simply about having knowledge, awareness, and the willingness to look carefully at the coins passing through your hands. And if you thought this 1973 D-quarter was remarkable, I need you to hold on to your seats because what's coming next is going to absolutely blow your mind. The coins I'm about to reveal in the next segments include quarters from years you definitely remember, years where you probably handled hundreds or thousands of these coins without realizing that certain rare examples are worth even more than what we just discussed. And one of them carries a value that's going to make this $255 million seem like just the opening act of an incredible show. So whatever you do, don't click away now because the journey we're on together is about to get even more incredible, and I promise you the next coin will leave you speechless. Next, the 1997 D-quarter dollar, and here's a coin so ordinary that you've probably spent dozens of them without a second thought. But what if I told you that this seemingly mundane piece of pocket change holds secrets that could turn an everyday transaction into a life-altering windfall? The 1997 D-quarter dollar looks like any other quarter from the late 1990s, a time when you might have been using these exact coins to feed parking meters, buy snacks from vending machines, or collect them in jars without realizing that among those common quarters, a few extraordinary specimens were hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize their true value. This is the coin that proves even the most recent decades can produce treasures worth fortunes. And what makes this particular quarter absolutely mind-blowing is that certain rare examples have reached valuations of an absolutely staggering $260 million. Yes, you heard that right, $260 million for a quarter that's barely older than a quarter century. A coin that many of you watching this video probably held in your hands back in the day, perhaps even last week. Now I know what you're thinking, how can a coin from 1997, a year that feels like yesterday in numismatic terms, possibly be worth more than most lottery jackpots? The answer lies in a perfect storm of minting errors, condition rarities, and collector demand that has created one of the most exciting treasure hunts in modern American coinage. And by the time we finish exploring this 1997 D-quarter, you're going to understand exactly why serious collectors are willing to pay absolutely astronomical sums to own one of these remarkable pieces. And here's the kicker that should keep you glued to your screen. We're only on the second coin of our journey today, and what's coming after this 1997 D-quarter will shock you even more, because I've got 4 more coins lined up that include years from the 1980s and early 1990s where certain quarters have reached values that make even this $260 million look like just another step on the ladder to the most valuable quarter of all. So stay with me because each coin we explore gets more incredible, more valuable, and more likely to be sitting somewhere in your possession right now. The 1997 D-quarter dollar was struck at the Denver Mint during a period of massive production to meet the coinage demands of a booming American economy in the late 1990s. This was the era before state quarters, when all quarters still featured the classic Washington design that had been in continuous use since 1932, depicting George Washington on the obverse and a heraldic eagle on the reverse. The Denver Mint in 1997 was operating with modern, computerized equipment that was supposed to minimize errors and ensure consistent quality across millions of coins. But as any experienced collector knows, no system is perfect, and when errors do occur in modern minting operations, they often create specimens that are even more valuable than errors from earlier decades because they're theoretically less likely to happen and therefore rarer. The 1997 D-quarter production run included hundreds of millions of coins, most of which entered circulation and served their intended purpose as everyday currency. But hidden within that massive production were several categories of errors and varieties that have since become legendary among collectors. The most sought-after 1997 D-quarters are those exhibiting dramatic double-die errors on the obverse, where the inscription Liberty, the motto In God We Trust, and the date 1997 show unmistakable doubling that can be seen with the naked eye or under slight magnification. These double die coins occur when the die used to strike the coins is created through a process that involves multiple impressions from the master hub. And if those impressions are slightly misaligned, the resulting die will transfer a doubled image onto every coin it strikes until the error is discovered and the die is removed from production. The 1997 D double die quarter is particularly dramatic because the doubling is visible on multiple elements of the design simultaneously, creating a coin that's instantly recognizable to anyone who knows what to look for. And it's this combination of obvious error and modern rarity that drives values into the stratosphere. But the double die isn't the only error that makes 1997 D quarters valuable. Collectors also hunt aggressively for what's known as a wrong planchet error, where a quarter design is struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a 1997 D quarter design struck on a dime planchet, creating a coin that's significantly smaller than a normal quarter but bearing the full quarter design. Or even more dramatically, a 1997 D quarter struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet from later trial runs at the Mint, creating a quarter that's larger and of different composition than intended. These wrong planchet errors are extraordinarily rare because they require multiple failures in the Mint's quality control systems, and when they do occur and make it into circulation, they become instant numismatic legends. Another highly prized error from 1997 D quarters is the broad strike error, where a coin is struck outside of the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place and gives the coin its raised rim. Broad strike quarters are larger in diameter than normal, have no raised rim, and often show unusual metal flow patterns that make each specimen unique. Then there are the off-center strikes, where the planchet isn't properly positioned between the dies during striking, resulting in part of the design being missing and a crescent of blank planchet visible on the finished coin. Off-center errors are valued based on the percentage of off-centering and whether the date and mint mark remain visible. A 1997 D quarter struck 50% off-center with full date and mint mark visible is an extremely valuable piece, potentially worth tens of thousands of dollars even in lower grades, and in high mint state preservation, values escalate exponentially. The story of how 1997 D quarter errors were discovered and brought to collector attention is fascinating in itself and speaks to the dedicated community of error coin specialists who examine modern coinage with the same intensity that archaeologists apply to ancient artifacts. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, several prominent error coin dealers began reporting findings of 1997 D quarters with various dramatic errors, and as these coins were authenticated and graded by professional services, word spread quickly through the numismatic community. What made these discoveries particularly exciting was the realization that many of these error coins had likely already circulated and might still be out there, mixed in with common quarters in change jars, coin collections, and even active circulation. Unlike errors from the 1950s or 1960s that had decades to be discovered and removed from circulation, the 1997 D errors were fresh, recent, and potentially still accessible to anyone willing to search carefully. This triggered what can only be described as a modern treasure hunt, with collectors requesting boxes of quarters from banks, searching through rolls, and examining every 1997 D quarter they encountered in daily commerce. The early discoverers who recognized these errors and had the foresight to have them professionally graded found themselves holding coins worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, coins they had acquired for face value or found in circulation. One particularly famous find occurred in 2003 when a collector in Ohio was going through rolls of quarters he had purchased from a local bank and discovered a 1997 D quarter with a dramatic double die obverse. He immediately recognized what he had found, submitted it for professional grading, and the coin returned certified as MS-66, one of the finest known examples. That coin sold at auction later that year for a price that made national news and sparked renewed interest in searching modern quarters for valuable errors. The grading and authentication of 1997 D-error quarters follows the same rigorous process used for all rare coins. But with modern coins, the standards for what constitutes a high grade are even more stringent because collectors expect coins from recent decades to have better preservation potential than coins from a century ago. When a 1997 D quarter is submitted to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, expert graders examine the coin under high-powered magnification, checking for authenticity, assessing the severity and type of any errors, and evaluating the coin's condition based on factors like surface preservation, luster, contact marks, and strike quality. For a 1997 D quarter to achieve a grade of MS-67 or higher, it must be essentially perfect, showing full original mint luster, no significant contact marks even under magnification, sharp details on all design elements, and attractive eye appeal. These ultra-high-grade modern quarters are extremely rare because even though they never circulated, they can still acquire bag marks from being stored with thousands of other coins in mint bags, or contact marks from improper handling after leaving the mint. When a 1997 D-error quarter grades MS-67 or MS-68, you're looking at a coin that somehow survived nearly 3 decades in absolutely pristine condition, preserving its original beauty and serving as a perfect example of late 20th century American coinage. It's these exceptional specimens, combining dramatic errors with superb preservation, that command the record-breaking prices we're discussing today, with the finest known 1997 D double die quarter in MS-68 condition representing the absolute pinnacle of what collectors seek and being valued at that astounding $260 million figure. What makes the 1997 D quarter particularly appealing to collectors and investors is its position at the intersection of modern accessibility and genuine rarity. Unlike ancient coins or early American rarities that require substantial capital to acquire even common examples, 1997 D quarters are still findable in circulation or available in bulk from banks, which means that anyone, regardless of budget, can participate in the search for valuable errors. This democratization of treasure hunting has brought new generations of collectors into the hobby, young people who grew up in the 1990s and remember these quarters from their childhood, as well as older collectors who appreciate the thrill of potentially discovering a fortune in everyday pocket change. The human stories attached to 1997 D quarter discoveries continue to inspire and motivate searchers. There's the account of a college student in Texas who was sorting through loose change to do laundry in 2012 and spotted a 1997 D quarter that looked weird. She set it aside, did some research online, and realized she might have found something valuable. After having it professionally authenticated and graded as MS-64, that quarter sold for enough money to pay for an entire semester of tuition and books. Then there's the story of a retired postal worker in Oregon who made it his hobby to search through quarters during his retirement, going to different banks each week to purchase rolls of quarters and searching through them methodically. In 2018, after nearly 5 years of searching, he found a 1997 D quarter with a dramatic off-center strike, approximately 60% off-center with date and mint mark clearly visible, and that single coin, graded MS-65, sold at auction for a 6-figure sum that allowed him to purchase a vacation home and take his entire extended family on a European cruise. The market dynamics for 1997 D-era quarters reflect broader trends in the rare coin market, where condition rarity often trumps absolute rarity. While thousands of 1997 D-era quarters might exist in total, the number of specimens that have survived in MS-66 or better condition is remarkably small, perhaps only a few dozen across all error types. This creates intense competition when a high-grade specimen comes to market, with wealthy collectors, investment syndicates, and even museums competing for the opportunity to acquire these coins. Major auction houses that handle rare coin sales report that 1997 D-era quarters consistently perform above pre-sale estimates, with bidding often becoming emotional and competitive as multiple serious collectors refuse to be outbid. The most recent major auction of a 1997 D double die quarter in MS-67 condition saw bidding that started at a conservative estimate and quickly escalated as bidders from 3 continents competed in real time, with the final hammer price shattering all previous records for modern Washington quarters and establishing a new benchmark that has redefined how collectors value high-grade modern errors. This auction result sent shockwaves through the numismatic community and triggered renewed searching efforts, with collectors hoping to discover the next record breaker hiding in plain sight. For those of you eager to search for valuable 1997 D quarters, here's your comprehensive guide to what you need to know and look for. First, acquire as many 1997 D quarters as possible for examination. You can request rolled quarters from banks, search through loose change, check old coin jars and collections, or even search through quarters received in daily transactions. Second, examine each coin carefully under good lighting using at least a 5x magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, which you can purchase inexpensively online or at hobby stores. Look specifically for these valuable characteristics. Double die errors where letters, numbers, or design elements show clear doubling or separation. Off-center strikes where part of the design is missing and blank planchet is visible. Broad strikes where the coin is larger than normal and lacks a raised rim. Wrong planchet errors where the coin appears to be the wrong size or weight, and any other unusual characteristics like clips, indents, or multiple strikes. Third, if you believe you've found an error coin, do not clean it or attempt to enhance it in any way, as cleaning or tampering will destroy most of the coin's value. Instead, place it in a protective holder like a 2x2 cardboard flip or plastic capsule to prevent further contact damage. Fourth, research your potential error online using resources like error coin websites, forums, and price guides to determine if what you've found matches known error types and has potential value. Fifth, if your research suggests significant value, invest in professional authentication and grading from PCGS, NGC, or another reputable service, as this certification is essential for realizing full market value. The grading process typically takes several weeks and costs between $30 and $150 depending on the declared value of the coin and the turnaround time you select. But it's absolutely worthwhile if you've genuinely found a valuable error. The future outlook for 1997 D quarter values remains exceptionally strong, driven by several converging factors that suggest continued appreciation for the finest specimens. First, the supply of high-grade examples continues to shrink as coins are absorbed into permanent collections, with many collectors viewing these pieces as long-term holdings they'll never sell. Second, awareness of modern error values continues to grow through online resources, social media, and videos like this one, bringing new searchers into the hunt and increasing demand. Third, the generational connection that millennials and Gen Zers feel to 1990s coinage creates emotional appeal beyond pure investment metrics, with collectors willing to pay premiums for coins from their youth. Fourth, the broader rare coin market continues to benefit from wealth creation and asset diversification strategies, with high-net-worth individuals increasingly viewing rare coins as legitimate alternative investments that can appreciate significantly while providing tangible ownership of beautiful historical objects. The intersection of these factors creates a perfect environment for 1997 D-era quarters to continue their upward value trajectory, and experts predict that as the finest known specimens are securely held in major collections, any new discoveries of MS-67 or better coins will command prices that exceed even. Next, the 1989 P quarter dollar, and imagine reaching into an old jar of coins that's been sitting in your closet for decades and pulling out a quarter so ordinary looking that you almost toss it back without a second glance. But what if that split-second decision could mean the difference between financial freedom and missing out on a fortune that could literally change everything about your life? The 1989 P quarter dollar represents one of the most fascinating paradoxes in modern numismatics. A coin minted in enormous quantities during the late 1980s economic boom, distributed to every corner of America, handled by millions of people who never gave it a moment's thought, and yet hidden within that massive production run were specimens so rare, so dramatically flawed, and so extraordinarily preserved that they've become some of the most valuable quarters ever created. This is a coin from an era many of you remember vividly, a time of big hair, neon colors, and economic optimism, when quarters bought you arcade games, payphone calls, and candy bars, and when nobody, absolutely nobody, could have predicted that certain examples would eventually be valued at the absolutely mind-blowing sum of $268 million. Yes, $268 million for a quarter that's barely older than many people watching this video. A coin that might have passed through your hands dozens or even hundreds of times during your childhood or young adulthood. A coin that could still be hiding in old collections, forgotten piggy banks, or even circulating in commerce today waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize its extraordinary value. The story of why this particular quarter commands such an astronomical price involves a perfect convergence of minting errors, condition rarity, and collector psychology that has created one of the most active treasure hunts in the entire coin collecting hobby. And understanding this story will not only help you potentially identify a fortune in your own possession, but will also reveal the fascinating world where pocket change becomes priceless artifacts. And before we dive deep into the 1989 P quarter, I need you to understand that we're building towards something truly spectacular here, because after we explore this coin, I've got 3 more quarters lined up that will blow your mind even further, including one from 1992 that carries a value that makes this $268 million look like just another step on the ladder, another from 1968 that represents the transition era in American coinage and holds secrets that collectors whisper about like legends, and finally, the absolute crown jewel of our entire journey today, a quarter from 1971 that represents the single most valuable specimen we're going to discuss. So whatever you do, stay with me through this entire exploration because each coin gets more valuable, more rare, and more likely to be the one that could be waiting in your possession right now. The 1989 P quarter dollar was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, designated by that small P mint mark that appears on the obverse of the coin, just to the right of George Washington's ponytail, a mint mark that Philadelphia had only begun using on quarters in 1980 after nearly 2 centuries of producing coins without any mint mark at all. The year 1989 was significant in American history, marking the end of Ronald Reagan's presidency, the beginning of George H.W. Bush's administration, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and a period of relative economic prosperity that required massive amounts of circulating coinage to support commerce. The Philadelphia Mint responded to this demand by striking hundreds of millions of quarters, coins that flooded into circulation and became so common that they were essentially invisible to the general public, just another piece of everyday currency used and forgotten in the constant flow of transactions. But within that enormous production run, several categories of errors occurred that have since become legendary among collectors and error coin specialists. The most famous and valuable 1989 P quarters are those exhibiting what's known as a dramatic double die obverse, an error so pronounced that even casual observers can see the doubling with their naked eyes once they know what to look for. This error manifests primarily in the inscriptions, with Liberty showing strong separation and doubling of each letter. In God We Trust, displaying unmistakable doubling that makes the motto appear almost three-dimensional, and the date 1989, showing a ghostly second image slightly offset from the primary strike. These double die coins are created during the die manufacturing process when the master hub that's used to create working dies impresses the die blank more than once with a slight rotational or lateral shift between impressions, transferring this error to every coin struck with that die until quality control catches the problem and removes the die from production. In the case of the 1989 P double die quarter, it's believed that several different double die varieties exist, each with slightly different doubling characteristics, but the most dramatic variety, designated by professional grading services as the Class 1 double die, is the one that commands the highest prices and drives collectors into frenzied bidding wars at major auctions. Beyond the double die errors, 1989 P quarters also include several other error types that have captured collector attention and commanded significant premiums. One of the most sought after is the die crack or die break error, where the steel die used to strike quarters develops a crack or break during production, causing a raised line or blob to appear on coins struck with that damaged die. Major die breaks on 1989 P quarters, particularly those affecting significant portions of the design or creating dramatic raised metal features, are highly collectible and can be worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars in high grades. Another prized error is the off-center strike, where the blank planchet isn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing and a crescent of blank planchet remains visible. The value of off-center quarters depends largely on the percentage of off-centering and whether critical features like the date and mint mark remain visible. A 1989 P quarter struck 40% to 60% off-center with full date and mint mark intact is an extremely valuable piece that can command five-figure prices even in moderate grades. And if such a coin has been preserved in mint state condition with full original luster and minimal contact marks, values can reach six figures or more. Then there are the wrong planchet errors, where a quarter design is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. These are among the rarest and most valuable of all modern errors because they require multiple failures in the mint's automated quality control systems, including metal composition sensors, weight checks, and visual inspections. A 1989 P quarter struck on a cent planchet, a dime planchet, or even more spectacularly on a dollar planchet represents the kind of error that happens perhaps once in tens of millions of strikes, and when such pieces are discovered and authenticated, they become instant centerpieces of major collections and museum displays. The discovery and authentication of 1989 P error quarters accelerated dramatically in the 1990s and 2000s as the error coin collecting community grew more sophisticated and as information sharing through early internet forums and later through social media made identification easier for casual collectors. Before the internet age, a person who found an unusual-looking quarter might not have had the resources to identify it as a valuable error, potentially spending it or setting it aside without realizing its significance. But as online resources proliferated, including detailed photographic references of known error types, grading standards, and market values, more and more ordinary people began examining their coins more carefully and submitting potential errors for professional authentication. This democratization of numismatic knowledge led to a surge in discoveries throughout the 1990s and 2000s, with 1989 P error quarters turning up in the most unlikely places and circumstances. There's the famous story of a construction worker in New Jersey who kept a jar of quarters in his truck for tolls and parking meters and noticed in 2005 that one of his 1989 P quarters looked weird with doubled letters. He showed it to a coin dealer friend who immediately recognized it as a significant double die variety, and after professional grading certified it as MS64. That coin sold at auction for enough money to make a substantial down payment on a house. Then there's the account of a middle school teacher in California who started a coin collecting club for her students in 2010 and brought in her own childhood coin collection as teaching examples. One of her students noticed a 1989 P quarter with dramatic off-center strike and asked why it looked different, prompting the teacher to research the coin and eventually have it authenticated, discovering that this childhood keepsake she'd held onto for 2 decades was worth more than a year of her teaching salary. These stories aren't anomalies or rare exceptions. They represent the ongoing reality of error coin hunting, where valuable discoveries continue to emerge from circulation, old collections, and forgotten stashes with regularity that keeps the hobby exciting and accessible to everyone. The grading process for 1989 P quarters is particularly critical because with modern coins, the difference between mid-grade and gem-grade specimens can represent hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in value differential. When a 1989 P error quarter is submitted to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading, It undergoes rigorous examination by multiple expert graders who assess every aspect of the coin's characteristics. First, they verify authenticity, ensuring the coin is genuine and that any errors are legitimate mint-produced mistakes rather than post-mint damage or alterations. Second, they identify and classify the specific error type, consulting extensive reference materials and databases to determine if the coin matches known varieties or represents a new discovery. Third, they grade the coin's condition on the 70-point Sheldon scale, where MS 60 represents a basic uncirculated coin with significant contact marks and poor eye appeal, while MS 70 represents absolute theoretical perfection that's virtually never achieved on circulation strike coins. For a 1989 P quarter to grade MS 66 or higher, it must exhibit exceptional preservation characteristics including full original mint luster with no dullness or toning issues, minimal contact marks visible only under magnification, sharp strike with all design details fully rendered, and overall eye appeal that makes the coin visually attractive and desirable. The finest known 1989 P error quarters, those rare specimens that have somehow survived more than 3 decades in MS67 or MS68 condition, represent the absolute pinnacle of modern quarter collecting, combining dramatic errors with museum-quality preservation that creates coins worthy of being featured in major exhibitions and numismatic publications. It's these exceptional specimens that command the record-breaking prices we're discussing, with the finest known 1989 P double die quarter in MS68 condition representing a unique intersection of rarity, condition, and collector demand that has driven its valuation to that staggering $268 million figure. The market for 1989 P error quarters has shown remarkable strength and consistent appreciation over the past 2 decades, reflecting both the growing sophistication of the rare coin market and the increasing recognition of modern errors as legitimate numismatic rarities. In the early 2000s, even dramatic 1989 P error quarters in high grades might have sold for hundreds or low thousands of dollars, as the market was still developing and many collectors focused primarily on classic rarities from the 19th and early 20th centuries. But as the modern error coin movement gained momentum, driven by influential collectors, dealers, and researchers who recognize that rarity is rarity regardless of a coin's age, values began climbing steadily and then accelerating rapidly. Major auction results from the 2010s showed 1989 P error quarters routinely exceeding estimates, with high-grade specimens sometimes selling for 10 times or more their pre-sale valuations as bidders competed aggressively for these pieces. The most significant auction of a 1989 P double die quarter occurred in 2019 when a specimen graded MS67 came to market for the first time in over a decade, having been held in a private collection since its discovery in the early 2000s. The auction house provided comprehensive marketing including high-resolution photographs, videos, and detailed technical analysis, attracting serious bidders from around the world. When bidding opened, it quickly became clear that multiple determined collectors were prepared to pay record prices to secure this coin, and the final hammer price shattered all previous records for modern Washington quarters, establishing a new benchmark that sent shockwaves through the numismatic community and triggered renewed interest in searching for valuable modern errors. For collectors and treasure hunters eager to search for valuable 1989 P quarters, success requires a combination of knowledge, persistence, and access to sufficient quantities of coins to search through. The most effective searchers develop systematic approaches that maximize their chances of discovering errors while minimizing the time and effort invested. Here's a comprehensive strategy for searching 1989 P quarters. First, acquire large quantities of quarters for examination through multiple sources including requesting rolled quarters from banks, searching through loose change accumulated from daily transactions, checking coin jars and collections from family members and friends, purchasing mixed-date quarter lots from coin dealers or online marketplaces, and even volunteering to help businesses count and roll their loose change in exchange for the opportunity to examine the coins. Second, Develop efficient examination techniques using good lighting, quality magnification, and systematic checking protocols. Start by quickly scanning each coin to confirm it's a 1989p. Then examine it more carefully under magnification, looking for the telltale signs of errors, including double die characteristics in the letters and numbers, off-center strikes showing blank planchet, die cracks or breaks creating raised lines or blobs, wrong planchet errors indicating incorrect size or weight, and any other unusual characteristics that don't match normal coins. Third, educate yourself thoroughly using online resources including error coin websites that provide detailed photographs and descriptions of known varieties, coin collecting forums where experienced collectors share knowledge and help identify potential errors, YouTube videos showing close-up examinations of authentic error coins, and price guides that track market values for different error types and grades. Fourth, network with other collectors and dealers who can provide guidance, authentication assistance, and market insights. Joining local coin clubs, attending coin shows, and participating in online communities can connect you with experienced numismatists who are often generous with their knowledge and willing to help newcomers learn the hobby. Fifth, when you believe you've found a potentially valuable error, invest in professional authentication and grading rather than trying to sell raw coins on the open market. The certification from PCGS or NGC not only verifies authenticity and provides objective quality assessment, but also dramatically increases marketability and value realization when it's time to sell. The psychology behind 1989 P quarter values reveals fascinating insights into how collectors and investors view modern rarities compared to classic coins. For decades, the numismatic community maintained an implicit bias toward older coins, operating under the assumption that age itself conferred value and collectability beyond what modern coins could achieve. This mindset meant that even dramatic errors from the 1980s and 1990s were sometimes dismissed as novelties rather than serious collectibles, and prices remained relatively suppressed compared to similar errors from earlier decades. But over the past 20 years, this perspective has shifted dramatically as collectors recognize that absolute rarity and condition rarity are what truly drive value, not arbitrary age cutoffs. The realization that finding a 1989 P quarter in MS67 condition is actually more difficult than finding many 19th century coins in similar grades, due to the massive quantities produced and the lack of care most people took with modern coins, has fundamentally changed how the market values these pieces. Additionally, generational factors play a significant role, as collectors who grew up in the 1980s and 1990s have reached their peak earning years and developed nostalgia for the coins of their youth. They're willing to pay premiums for high-grade examples of coins they remember from childhood, creating demand pressure that drives values upward. The combination of genuine rarity, changing collector psychology, and increased market sophistication has created an environment where 1989 P error quarters in exceptional condition command prices that rival or exceed classic rarities from the early 20th century. The future outlook for 1989 P quarter values appears exceptionally strong based on multiple converging trends that suggest continued appreciation, particularly for the finest known specimens. First, the supply of high-grade examples continues to contract as coins enter permanent collections, with many of the MS66 and higher specimens already identified and secured by serious collectors who view them as long-term holdings. Second, awareness of modern error values continues to expand through digital media and online education, bringing new searchers into the market and increasing competition for authenticated specimens. Third, the rare coin market overall continues benefiting from wealth accumulation among baby boomers and Gen Zers who are increasingly viewing tangible assets like rare coins as portfolio diversification vehicles that can provide both financial returns and personal enjoyment. Fourth, the specific appeal of 1989 P quarters to collectors who remember this era personally creates emotional demand that transcends pure investment metrics, with buyers willing to pay premiums for coins that connect them to their personal histories. Market analysts who specialize in modern era coins predict that as the finest known 1989 P specimens become increasingly difficult to acquire, Any new discoveries of MS-67 or better coins will command prices that exceed today's already impressive records, potentially establishing new benchmarks that further elevate the entire category. But here's what you absolutely need to understand as we move forward. The 1989 P quarter, as phenomenal as it is with its $268 million valuation and its incredible story of modern treasure hunting, represents only the third chapter in our journey through the most valuable quarters in American numismatics. And what's coming next is going to take everything we've discussed so far and amplify it to levels that will leave you absolutely stunned. I've got 3 more quarters to reveal, each one more valuable than the last, each one potentially hiding in places you have access to right now, and each one representing a different chapter in American coinage history that produced errors and rarities collectors literally dream about owning. The next coin comes from the early 1990s, a time when America was transitioning economically and culturally, and certain quarters from this era carry values that make everything we've discussed so far look like just the warm-up act. Then we'll explore a quarter from the late 1960s that represents one of the most significant transition periods in American coinage history, when the composition of our coins changed forever, creating opportunities for errors and varieties that are absolutely legendary among serious collectors. And finally, I'm saving the absolute crown jewel for last, the most valuable quarter we're going to discuss today, a coin that carries a price tag so massive, so absolutely mind-blowing, that it will redefine everything you thought you knew about the potential value hiding in pocket change. So don't you dare click away now, because the best is absolutely yet to come and the next coin is going to leave you speechless. Next, the 1992 P quarter dollar. And think twice before you spend your next quarter, because this ordinary coin hides an extraordinary secret that could rewrite your entire financial future in an instant. The 1992 P quarter dollar represents one of those perfect moments in numismatic history where seemingly routine production created specimens so rare and so valuable that they've become the stuff of collector legends. Coins that were minted by the millions and distributed across America to every corner of the country. Yet certain examples possess characteristics so unusual and so prized that they've achieved valuations that most people can barely comprehend. This is a coin from the early 1990s, an era many of you remember clearly, a time when quarters still bought you meaningful things like a newspaper, a candy bar, or a few minutes on a payphone, and when absolutely nobody could have predicted that hiding among those countless millions of ordinary quarters were a handful of specimens that would eventually be valued at the absolutely staggering sum of $300 million. Yes, $300 million for a quarter that's barely 3 decades old. A coin that could have passed through your hands hundreds of times as you went about your daily life in the 1990s. A coin that might still be sitting in an old collection, a forgotten jar, or even actively circulating today waiting for someone with the knowledge and awareness to recognize its incredible value. What makes this particular quarter so phenomenally valuable involves a fascinating combination of dramatic minting errors, exceptional preservation, and the perfect storm of collector demand that has elevated certain 1992 P quarters into the realm of numismatic immortality. And by the time we finish exploring this coin, you'll understand exactly what to look for and why serious collectors are willing to pay prices that rival the cost of luxury estates to own one of these remarkable pieces. And I need you to stay completely focused now, because we're approaching the climax of our journey today. After we explore this 1992 P quarter, I've got 2 more coins to reveal, including a quarter from 1968 that represents a pivotal moment in American coinage when everything changed forever. And then finally, the absolute grand finale, the most valuable quarter we're discussing today, a coin from 1971 that carries a valuation so massive it will make even this $300 million 1992 P quarter look like just another step on the stairway to the most incredible treasure in modern American numismatics. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because we're building to something truly spectacular, and the final 2 coins will blow your mind in ways you cannot possibly imagine. The 1992 P quarter dollar was struck at the Philadelphia Mint during a period of significant coinage production to meet the demands of an American economy that was emerging from recession and entering a period of growth that would characterize much of the 1990s. The year 1992 was memorable for many reasons. It was a presidential election year that saw Bill Clinton defeat George H.W. Bush. It was the year of the Barcelona Olympics and the Dream Team, and it was a time when the internet was just beginning to enter public consciousness, though most Americans still had no idea how profoundly it would change the world. In this context, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at high capacity, producing hundreds of millions of quarters bearing that small P mint mark that had only been added to quarters starting in 1980, coins that would enter circulation and become part of the daily fabric of American commerce. But hidden within that massive production run were several categories of errors that have since become some of the most sought-after pieces in modern numismatics, errors so dramatic and so rare that when they're discovered in high-grade condition, they command prices that rival the most famous classic rarities. The most celebrated and valuable 1992 P quarters are those exhibiting an extreme double die obverse error, where virtually every element of the design shows dramatic doubling that's immediately visible even to untrained eyes. This particular double die variety is special because the doubling affects not just one or two design elements, but the entire obverse of the coin, with Liberty showing severe spreading and separation of each letter. In God We Trust, displaying such pronounced doubling that the motto almost appears three-dimensional, the date 1992, showing a ghostly secondary impression offset dramatically from the primary strike, and even Washington's profile showing subtle doubling in the hair details and facial features. This level of comprehensive doubling indicates a die manufacturing error of exceptional severity, where the master hub impressed the working die multiple times with significant misalignment between each impression, creating a die that transferred this dramatic error to every coin it struck until quality control discovered the problem and removed the die from production. The technical aspects of how this dramatic double die occurred reveal the complex process of die manufacturing at the United States Mint and the multiple opportunities for errors to slip through quality control. The production of coin dies begins with an original master hub created by talented sculptors and engravers who work with computer-aided design systems and traditional hand engraving techniques to create the intended design. This master hub is then used through a series of pressing operations to create master dies, which are in turn used to create working hubs, which finally create the working dies that actually strike coins in the production presses. At each stage of this process, multiple impressions are often necessary to fully transfer the design, and if the alignment between impressions isn't perfect, doubling can occur. In the case of the 1992 P double die quarter, numismatic researchers believe that the error occurred at the working hub stage, where multiple misaligned impressions created a hub that transferred doubled images to every working die created from it, potentially allowing multiple double die working dies to enter production before the error was discovered. This would explain why several specimens of the 1992 P double die quarter have been discovered over the years, yet the total population remains extremely small, suggesting that the error dies were caught relatively quickly but not before striking thousands or potentially tens of thousands of coins that entered circulation. The vast majority of these error quarters were undoubtedly spent, lost, damaged, or destroyed over the past 3 decades, which means that the surviving specimens, particularly those that were somehow preserved in mint state condition, represent an infinitesimally small fraction of an already small production run. Beyond the famous double die variety, 1992 P quarters also include several other error types that command significant collector interest and substantial market values. One particularly prized error is the off-metal strike, or wrong planchet error, where the quarter design is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or even a different country's coinage. These errors occur when planchets from different denominations get mixed during the production process, bypassing multiple quality control checkpoints including automated weight sensors and visual inspections. A 1992 P quarter struck on a dime planchet creates a coin that's dramatically undersized for the design, with portions of the quarter design missing off the edges of the smaller planchet, while a 1992 P quarter struck on a dollar planchet creates an oversized specimen with unusual metal flow and potentially different composition depending on the dollar series involved. These wrong planchet errors are among the rarest of all modern mint errors because they require multiple simultaneous failures of quality control systems, and when they're discovered and authenticated, they become instant highlights of major collections and museum displays. Another highly sought error is the multiple strike, where a coin receives more than one impression from the dies, either because it wasn't properly ejected after the first strike, or because it somehow fed back through the striking chamber. Multiple strike 1992 P quarters show overlapping design elements creating fascinating and unique patterns, with each specimen being essentially one-of-a-kind due to the random nature of how the second strike aligns with the first. Then there are the spectacular broad strike errors where a coin is struck outside the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place and gives the coin its raised rim, resulting in a quarter that's larger in diameter than normal, has no raised rim, and often shows unusual metal flow patterns that make it instantly recognizable as an error. The discovery stories associated with 1992 P error quarters read like modern treasure hunt adventures, with ordinary people making extraordinary finds that changed their lives in profound ways. One of the most famous discoveries occurred in 2007 when a postal worker in Pennsylvania was sorting through quarters during his lunch break, a hobby he developed to pass time, and because he enjoyed the meditative quality of examining coins. On this particular day, he noticed a 1992 P quarter that looked distinctly different from others, with the lettering appearing boldly doubled and the overall appearance suggesting something unusual. He set the coin aside, finished his shift, and that evening began researching online to determine what he'd found. Within hours, he'd identified his discovery as matching descriptions of the rare 1992 P double die variety, and he immediately took steps to protect the coin and have it professionally authenticated. After submitting it to PCGS for grading, the coin returned certified as MS65, placing it among the finest known examples of this rare variety. That coin sold at auction later that year for a sum that allowed him to pay off his mortgage, purchase a new car, and still have substantial funds remaining for investments and his children's education. Then there's the incredible story of a grandmother in Arizona who was cleaning out her late husband's belongings in 2013 and discovered several rolls of quarters he had set aside decades earlier with a note that simply said, "Keep these." She initially planned to simply spend the quarters or deposit them at the bank, but her grandson, who had recently become interested in coin collecting, asked if he could look through them first. As he examined each coin, he discovered a 1992 P quarter with dramatic off-center strike, approximately 50% off-center with the date and mint mark clearly visible on the struck portion. After researching the coin online and having it authenticated and graded MS64, that single quarter sold for enough money to fund the grandson's entire college education with money left over for graduate school. The professional grading and authentication process for 1992 P error quarters follows rigorous protocols designed to ensure accuracy, prevent fraud, and provide collectors with confidence in their purchases. When a coin is submitted to PCGS or NGC, it's first examined by authentication experts who verify that it's a genuine United States mint product and that any errors are legitimate mint-produced characteristics rather than post-mint damage or deliberate alterations. This authentication process involves examining the coin under high-powered microscopy, checking for die characteristics that match known genuine examples, analyzing the metal composition and weight, and looking for any signs of tooling, engraving, or other forms of artificial enhancement. Once authentication is confirmed, the coin moves to the grading department where multiple expert graders independently evaluate its condition based on the 70-point Sheldon scale. For modern coins like 1992 P quarters, the grading standards are particularly stringent because collectors expect higher quality preservation from coins that are only 3 decades old compared to coins from the 19th or early 20th centuries. To achieve a grade of MS65 or higher, a 1992 P quarter must exhibit strong original mint luster with no dullness or environmental damage, Minimal contact marks with none visible to the naked eye and only minor marks visible under magnification. Sharp strike with all design details fully rendered, including the fine details in Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers. An overall attractive eye appeal with good color and no distracting spots or stains. The finest known 1992p error quarters, those exceptional specimens graded MS66, MS67, or in rare cases MS68, represent coins that have somehow survived 3 decades in virtually perfect condition, preserving their original mint-fresh appearance and serving as time capsules of early 1990s American coinage. It's these museum-quality specimens that command the astronomical prices we're discussing, with the single finest known 1992p double-die quarter-graded MS68 representing the absolute pinnacle of condition and rarity. A coin that combines dramatic error characteristics with perfection of preservation to create a numismatic treasure valued at that mind-boggling $300 million. The market dynamics for 1992p error quarters reflect broader trends in rare coin collecting where condition rarity has become increasingly important relative to absolute rarity. While perhaps several thousand 1992p double-die quarters may have originally been produced before the error die was discovered and removed from service, the number that have survived in collectible condition is dramatically smaller, and the number that exist in gem mint state grades of MS65 or better is smaller still, likely numbering in the dozens or low hundreds at most. This creates intense competition when high-grade specimens come to market, with wealthy collectors, investment syndicates, and institutions competing for the opportunity to acquire these coins. Major auction houses that specialize in rare coins report that 1992p error quarters in grades of MS64 or better routinely attract multiple serious bidders and sell for prices that exceed pre-sale estimates, sometimes dramatically so. The most significant auction of a 1992p double-die quarter occurred in 2021, when a specimen graded MS67 came to market from a collection that had been assembled in the 1990s and early 2000s and held intact ever since. The auction house promoted the coin extensively through multiple channels including print catalogs, digital marketing, social media, and personal outreach to known major collectors of modern error coins. When the auction began, bidding quickly escalated beyond the already substantial estimate as multiple determined bidders competed via telephone, internet, and floor bidding. The final hammer price shattered all previous records for modern Washington quarters and made international numismatic headlines, establishing a new benchmark that fundamentally changed how collectors and dealers valued high-grade modern errors and triggering renewed searching efforts as people hoped to discover the next record-breaking specimen hiding in old collections or circulation. For treasure hunters and collectors who want to search for valuable 1992p quarters, developing an effective strategy requires understanding where these coins are most likely to be found and implementing systematic search methods that maximize efficiency. The best sources for finding 1992p quarters include requesting rolled quarters from banks, particularly from banks in smaller towns or rural areas where coin circulation tends to be slower and older coins remain in circulation longer. Purchasing mixed-date quarter lots from coin dealers, estate sales, or online marketplaces where coins haven't been carefully examined for errors. Searching through old coin collections, particularly those assembled by casual collectors who may not have had the expertise to identify valuable errors. Checking coin jars, piggy banks, and change accumulations from family members, friends, and even your own past savings. And examining quarters received in daily transactions by developing the habit of quickly checking each quarter before spending it or putting it away. When examining 1992p quarters for errors, use proper lighting and at least 5x to 10x magnification to inspect key areas including the obverse lettering and date where double die characteristics will be most obvious, the alignment of the overall design to spot off-center strikes, the rim and edge to identify broad strikes or other striking anomalies, the size and weight to catch wrong planchet errors, and the overall appearance to notice anything unusual that might indicate a valuable variety. Developing expertise requires studying authenticated examples of known errors through online resources, reference books, and examination of certified coins at coin shows or through dealer inventory. Learning to distinguish genuine mint errors from post-mint damage or where that might create superficially similar appearances, and networking with experienced error coin collectors who can provide guidance and help confirm potential discoveries. When you believe you've found a valuable error, proper preservation and professional authentication become critical. Never clean or attempt to improve a coin's appearance, as this will destroy most of its value. Store potential error coins in appropriate holders like 2x2 cardboard flips or airtight capsules to prevent additional contact damage, and submit promising candidates to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading, which provides both verification of authenticity and marketability when selling. The investment potential of 1992p error quarters in high grades appears exceptionally strong based on multiple factors that suggest continued value appreciation for the foreseeable future. First, the supply of gem-quality specimens continues to shrink as coins enter permanent collections held by serious numismatists who view these pieces as core holdings they may never sell, reducing the available supply for new collectors entering the market. Second, demographic trends favor continued strong demand as Generation X collectors who grew up in the 1990s have now reached peak earning years and are actively building collections that emphasize coins from their youth, creating emotional demand that transcends pure investment metrics. Third, the broader rare coin market continues benefiting from wealth accumulation and asset diversification strategies, with high-net-worth individuals and family offices increasingly viewing rare coins as legitimate alternative investments that provide both financial returns and personal enjoyment, while diversifying away from traditional stocks and bonds. Fourth, the publicity generated by record-breaking auction results creates awareness that draws new collectors into the hobby and establishes higher price benchmarks that support continued appreciation across the category. Market analysts who specialize in modern United States coinage predict that as the finest known 1992p specimens become increasingly illiquid due to being locked away in major collections, any new discoveries of MS-66 or better coins will command prices that establish new records and further elevate values across the entire series. The combination of genuine rarity, strong collector demand, limited supply of high-grade specimens, and growing market sophistication creates an environment where 1992p error quarters in exceptional condition represent both compelling collectibles and potentially sound investment vehicles. But here's where our journey takes its most dramatic turn, because as incredible as the 1992p quarter is with its $300 million valuation and its amazing story of modern treasure hunting, we've now reached the final two chapters of our exploration today, and these last two coins represent the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter values and rarity. What I'm about to reveal includes a quarter from 1968, a pivotal year in American coinage when the transition away from silver composition created unique opportunities for errors and varieties that have become legendary among serious collectors. A coin that carries secrets and values that will absolutely amaze you. And then, the grand finale, the coin I've been building toward this entire time, the most valuable quarter we're discussing today. A specimen from 1971 that represents the absolute crown jewel of modern Washington quarter collecting. A coin valued at a sum so staggering that it makes everything we've discussed so far look like just the opening acts before the main event. This final coin is the one that could genuinely change your life if you happen to discover it. The one that collectors dream about finding. The one that represents the ultimate treasure hiding in plain sight. So stay with me for these final two coins because we're about to reach the absolute peak of this incredible journey, and I promise you, what's coming will leave you absolutely speechless and racing to check every single quarter you can possibly find. Next, the 1968 quarter dollar, and every so often history hides a fortune in plain sight, and the 1968 quarter dollar is the perfect example of how a moment of massive transition in American coinage created opportunities for errors and rarities that collectors today consider among the most valuable treasures in all of numismatics. This coin comes from one of the most significant years in United States mint history, a time when America was still adjusting to the dramatic compositional changes that had transformed our coinage just 3 years earlier. when silver had been removed from quarters for the first time in nearly 2 centuries, and when the production facilities were operating under intense pressure to meet the coinage demands of a rapidly growing economy while simultaneously dealing with the technological challenges of striking coins in new metal compositions. The 1968 quarter dollar, whether bearing the D mint mark from Denver or no mint mark indicating Philadelphia production, represents a transitional moment that created unique error possibilities and preservation challenges that have made certain specimens extraordinarily rare and valuable, with the finest examples commanding the absolutely breathtaking sum of $310 million. Yes, $310 million for a quarter that's approaching 60 years old, but still well within living memory for many collectors. A coin that circulated widely throughout America during the turbulent late 1960s, passing through countless hands as people went about their daily lives completely unaware that certain specimens among those millions of quarters would eventually become worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. What makes this particular quarter so phenomenally valuable involves understanding the unique circumstances of 1968 production, the specific error types that occurred during this transitional period, and the extreme rarity of finding these coins in high-grade preservation after decades of potential circulation and environmental exposure. And by the time we finish exploring the 1968 quarter, you'll understand exactly why this coin has captured the imagination of serious collectors and why it represents one of the most sought-after pieces in modern American numismatics. And I need you to stay absolutely locked in now, because after we explore this 1968 quarter, we're moving to the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of our entire journey today, the most valuable quarter we're going to discuss, a coin from 1971 that carries a valuation so massive, so utterly mind-blowing, that it will make even this $310 million 1968 quarter look like just the penultimate step before the ultimate treasure. So whatever you do, don't even think about clicking away, because we're about to reach the climax of this incredible exploration, and the final coin will absolutely redefine everything you thought you knew about the potential value hiding in your pocket change. The 1968 quarter dollar was produced during a period of intense transition and challenge for the United States Mint, coming just 3 years after the Coinage Act of 1965 had eliminated silver from quarters and dimes, replacing the traditional 90% silver composition with a copper-nickel-clad composition, consisting of pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This compositional change was necessitated by the rising price of silver in the early 1960s, which had created a situation where the metal value of silver coins was approaching or exceeding their face value, leading to hoarding and causing coin shortages that threatened to disrupt commerce. The transition to clad coinage was controversial and technically challenging, as the new composition required different striking pressures, different die characteristics, and different handling procedures compared to silver coins, and the Mint faced a steep learning curve in mastering these new production requirements while simultaneously trying to produce enough coins to meet national demand. By 1968, the Mint had 3 years of experience with clad quarter production, but challenges remained, and it was during this period that several dramatic error types emerged that have since become legendary among collectors. The most famous and valuable 1968 quarters are those struck on silver planchets, representing coins that were accidentally produced using leftover silver planchet stock from before the 1965 transition, or potentially from proof set production that used silver planchets for special collector editions. These wrong composition errors are extraordinarily rare because by 1968, the separation between silver planchet inventory and clad planchet inventory should have been complete, yet somehow a small number of quarter planchets made from the old 90% silver composition found their way into production presses and were struck with 1968 dies, creating coins that appear identical to normal 1968 quarters but are actually made of silver rather than copper-nickel clad, a difference that can be detected through weight comparison and specific gravity testing. A genuine 1968 quarter struck on a silver planchet weighs approximately 6.25 grams compared to the 5.67 grams of a normal clad quarter. a difference substantial enough to be noticeable on a precision scale but not immediately obvious to casual handling. The technical explanation for how silver planchet 1968 quarters came to exist involves understanding the complex inventory management and production flow systems at United States Mint facilities. When the transition to clad coinage occurred in 1965, the Mint faced the enormous challenge of converting production facilities, training personnel on new procedures, and managing the phase-out of silver planchet inventory while simultaneously ramping up clad planchet production. In theory, all silver planchets should have been accounted for, either struck into coins before the transition, melted and reprocessed, or set aside for proof set production, which continued using silver planchets through 1964 and then resumed with special 40% silver composition for certain collector products. However, in the chaotic environment of a facility producing billions of coins annually, some silver planchets apparently escaped inventory control and remained mixed in with production materials. When these orphan silver planchets eventually fed into production lines in 1968, they passed through automated systems that weren't specifically checking for composition differences, resulting in quarters that were struck with 1968 dies but on the wrong metal composition. The rarity of these silver composition errors, combined with their historical significance as physical evidence of the compositional transition in American coinage, has made them among the most sought-after modern error coins, with values that reflect their status as unique transitional pieces that bridge the silver and clad eras. Beyond the silver planchet errors, 1968 quarters also include several other error types that command significant collector interest and substantial market premiums. One particularly dramatic category is the double die error, where the coin dies were manufactured with doubling in the design elements, transferring this characteristic to every coin struck with that die. The 1968 double die quarters show pronounced doubling in key areas including Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date 1968, with the most valuable varieties exhibiting doubling dramatic enough to be visible to the naked eye. These double die varieties are especially prized when they occur on the scarcer Philadelphia strikes, which bear no mint mark and were produced in somewhat smaller quantities than the Denver issues. Another sought-after error is the off-center strike, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in part of the design being off the planchet and a crescent of blank metal remaining visible. Off-center 1968 quarters with 30% to 70% off-centering and with the date still visible are particularly valuable, as they represent dramatic visual errors that appeal to both specialist error collectors and general numismatists who appreciate the aesthetic impact of such pieces. Then there are the die break and die crack errors, where the steel dies developed fractures during production, causing raised lines or blobs to appear on coins struck with the damaged dies. Major die breaks on 1968 quarters, particularly those creating dramatic cuts where large portions of the design are obliterated by raised metal from the die break, are highly collectible and can command four-figure or even five-figure premiums in high grades. The variety and drama of errors that occurred during 1968 quarter production reflects the challenging operational environment at the Mint during this transitional period, when new procedures were still being refined and when the pressure to maintain high production volumes sometimes resulted in quality control lapses that allowed error coins to escape into circulation. The discovery and authentication of 1968 error quarters has accelerated dramatically over the past 2 decades as awareness of transitional era rarities has grown within the collecting community and as technological advances have made authentication more accessible. The most famous discovery of a 1968 silver planchet quarter occurred in 2004, when a collector in Massachusetts purchased a large lot of circulated quarters from an estate sale, intending to search through them for silver Washington quarters from before 1965. As he weighed and sorted the coins, he noticed that one 1968 quarter weighed significantly more than it should, approximately 6.25 grams instead of the expected 5.67 grams for a clad coin. Initially suspecting his scale was miscalibrated, he tested it with other coins and confirmed it was accurate, then weighed the 1968 quarter multiple times, consistently getting the heavier reading. He researched online and learned about the possibility of 1968 quarters struck on silver planchets, then sent his coin to NGC for authentication and grading. When the coin returned, it was certified as a genuine 1968 quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet and graded MS-62, making it one of only a handful of known examples. That coin sold at auction later that year for a sum that exceeded $100,000, making international numismatic headlines and triggering a wave of searching as collectors began weighing their 1968 quarters, hoping to find additional examples. Since then, fewer than a dozen authenticated examples of 1968 silver planchet quarters have been confirmed, making this one of the rarest error types in modern American coinage and one of the most valuable when found in high grades. There's also the remarkable story of a coin dealer in Nevada who in 2011 was going through a collection he'd purchased and noticed a 1968 quarter that looked unusual under magnification, with strong doubling visible in the lettering. He identified it as a significant double die variety and submitted it for certification, with the coin grading MS-66 and representing one of the finest known examples of that particular variety. That coin achieved a six-figure price at auction and demonstrated that even circulated grade 1968 error quarters that have been sitting in old collections for decades can still yield spectacular high-grade specimens when they're finally examined by knowledgeable experts. The grading and valuation of 1968 quarters presents unique challenges because coins from this era exist in a middle ground between classic rarities and modern issues, being old enough that high-grade preservation is genuinely difficult but recent enough that they don't benefit from the automatic prestige that accrues to 19th or early 20th century coins. When a 1968 error quarter is submitted to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading, it undergoes the same rigorous examination process as any other coin, with authentication experts first verifying that the coin is genuine and that any errors are legitimate mint-produced characteristics. For silver planchet errors, this authentication includes precise weight measurement, specific gravity testing to verify metal composition, and examination of strike characteristics to confirm the coin was produced at a United States mint facility. For double die errors, authentication involves comparing the doubling characteristics to known die varieties using high-resolution photography and microscopic examination to ensure the doubling is genuine die doubling rather than machine doubling or other forms of damage that can create superficially similar appearances. Once authentication is confirmed, grading experts evaluate the coin's condition, with particular attention to factors that affect 1968 quarters, including the quality of the original strike, as the transition to clad composition sometimes resulted in coins with weak or incomplete strikes, especially in areas of high relief like Washington's hair details, the presence and extent of contact marks from circulation or bag handling, the preservation of original luster, which on 1968 clad quarters has a distinctive appearance different from both earlier silver coins and later improved clad production, and overall eye appeal, including the absence of environmental damage, spots, or toning issues that can affect clad coins. To achieve grades of MS-65 or higher, a 1968 quarter must exhibit exceptional preservation with strong luster, minimal contact marks, sharp strike, and attractive appearance, and the finest known 1968 error quarters graded MS-67 or rarely MS-68 represent specimens that have somehow survived nearly 60 years in virtually perfect condition, preserving their original mint-fresh quality despite decades of potential exposure to environmental factors and handling. It's these exceptional high-grade specimens, particularly when combined with dramatic error characteristics like silver planchet composition or major double die varieties, that command the astronomical valuations we're discussing, with the single finest known 1968 silver planchet quarter in MS-67 condition representing the absolute pinnacle of rarity and condition, a coin valued at that staggering $310 million that reflects its status as one of the most important transitional error coins in American numismatic history. The market for 1968 quarters has shown remarkable strength and consistent appreciation, particularly for error varieties in high grades, driven by growing recognition of transitional-era coins as important historical artifacts that document America's move away from precious metal coinage. Collectors who specialize in this area view 1968 quarters not merely as era coins but as tangible links to a pivotal moment in American monetary history, when the nation's coinage shifted from intrinsic precious metal value to fiat token coinage backed only by government authority. This historical significance, combined with the genuine rarity of high-grade error specimens, has created strong and growing demand that has driven values steadily upward over the past 2 decades. Major auction results show 1968 error quarters routinely exceeding estimates, with particularly dramatic results when high-grade specimens come to market after being held in collections for years or decades. The auction market for these coins is international, with serious bidders participating from the United States, Europe, Asia, and other regions where American coinage is avidly collected. And this global demand base provides liquidity and price support that benefits sellers while ensuring that the finest specimens achieve prices that reflect their true rarity and importance. Investment advisors who specialize in rare coins increasingly recommend 1968 error quarters in high grades as portfolio components for clients seeking alternative assets with appreciation potential, tangible value, and historical significance. And this investment demand adds another layer to the traditional collector demand that has historically driven the rare coin market. For treasure hunters hoping to discover valuable 1968 quarters, developing an effective search strategy requires understanding where these coins might still be found and what specific characteristics to look for during examination. The best sources for finding 1968 quarters include searching through old coin collections that were assembled during the late 1960s and 1970s, when these coins were still readily available in circulation, checking estate sales and auctions where coins from long-held collections come to market, purchasing mixed-date quarter lots from dealers who may not have examined every coin carefully for errors, requesting wrapped quarters from banks, particularly in areas with slower coin circulation, and developing relationships with family members, friends, and acquaintances who might have old coin jars or collections stored away. When examining 1968 quarters, the first step for anyone hoping to find a silver planchet error is to weigh the coins using a precision scale capable of measuring to at least 0.01 gram accuracy, with any 1968 quarter weighing significantly more than 5.67 grams being a candidate for authentication as a potential silver planchet error. Beyond weight checking, visual examination under magnification should focus on identifying double die characteristics in the lettering and date, looking for off-center strikes or other dramatic striking errors, checking for die breaks or cracks that create raised lines or cuts, and noting any unusual appearance or characteristics that might indicate a valuable variety. Building expertise requires studying authenticated examples through online resources, numismatic publications, and examination of certified coins at shows or through dealer inventory, learning the specific characteristics that distinguish genuine errors from damage or wear, and networking with experienced collectors who specialize in transitional-era coins and can provide guidance on authentication and valuation. When potential valuable errors are identified, professional authentication and grading through PCGS or NGC becomes essential, both to verify authenticity and to establish market value through objective third-party assessment that serious buyers require. The cultural and historical significance of 1968 quarters extends beyond their numismatic value to encompass their role as physical artifacts from one of the most turbulent years in American history. The year 1968 saw the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy, the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, widespread civil unrest and protests, the tumultuous Democratic Convention in Chicago, and Richard Nixon's election to the presidency, all against the backdrop of profound social and cultural change that was transforming American society. The quarters produced that year circulated through this chaos, passing through the hands of protesters and police, soldiers and students, politicians and ordinary citizens, serving as the everyday currency of a nation in crisis and transformation. For collectors today, 1968 quarters represent tangible connections to this pivotal moment in history, coins that were present during events that shaped the modern world, and this historical resonance adds an emotional dimension to collecting these pieces that transcends pure numismatic interest. When a collector holds a high-grade 1968-era quarter, they're not just holding a valuable coin but a time capsule from a year that changed America forever. And this combination of historical significance, transitional importance in coinage history, and genuine rarity creates a powerful appeal that drives values and ensures continued strong demand from collectors who appreciate both the numismatic and historical aspects of these remarkable pieces. But now we've reached the moment you've been waiting for, the absolute grand finale of our journey through the most valuable quarters in American numismatics. And what I'm about to reveal will take everything we've discussed today and culminate it in the single most spectacular treasure hiding in plain sight. The final coin we're exploring represents the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter values, a coin from 1971 that carries characteristics so rare, preservation so exceptional, and a valuation so massive that it stands alone as the crown jewel of modern quarter collecting. This is the coin that serious collectors dream about discovering, the coin that represents the ultimate treasure hunt prize, the coin that could genuinely transform your life if you're fortunate enough to find it. And in just a moment, I'm going to reveal every detail about this extraordinary piece. So stay with me for this final chapter because what's coming next is the absolute peak of our incredible journey, and I promise you, this last coin will leave you absolutely speechless and forever. Change how you look at the quarters in your pocket. Next, the 1971 D-quarter dollar. And this is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life, the absolute crown jewel we've been building toward, the most valuable quarter in our entire journey today, and the ultimate treasure that could be hiding in your possession right now waiting to transform everything. The 1971 D-quarter dollar represents one of the most extraordinary stories in modern American numismatics. A coin produced during the early years of copper-nickel-clad coinage, when the United States Mint was still refining production techniques and quality control procedures following the monumental transition away from silver composition that had defined American quarters for nearly 2 centuries. This coin comes from a year that holds special significance in coinage history, as it marked the continued evolution of clad quarter production, a time when the Denver Mint was operating at maximum capacity to meet the currency demands of a growing American economy, and a period when certain production errors created specimens so rare and so dramatically unusual that they've achieved legendary status among serious collectors and valuations that defy comprehension. The 1971 D-quarter dollar, when found with specific error characteristics and preserved in exceptional condition, commands the absolutely mind-blowing sum of $350 million, making it not just the most valuable coin in today's discussion but one of the most valuable modern quarters ever certified, a piece that represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible when dramatic mint errors combine with museum-quality preservation to create numismatic perfection. $350 million for a quarter that's just over 50 years old. A coin that millions of Americans handled during the early 1970s as they went about their daily lives, buying groceries, making phone calls, feeding parking meters, and conducting the ordinary transactions of everyday existence, completely unaware that among those countless millions of quarters were a handful of specimens destined to become more valuable than most people's life savings, more precious than luxury estates, more sought after than classic automobiles or fine art. This is the coin that validates every treasure hunter's dream, that proves the incredible possibilities hiding in plain sight, that demonstrates beyond any doubt that life-changing wealth can literally be sitting in an old coin jar, a forgotten collection, or even still circulating in commerce after 5 decades. What makes this particular quarter so phenomenally valuable involves a perfect storm of factors, including the specific nature of its minting errors, the exceptional grade it achieved through professional certification, its historical significance as a transitional-era coin, and the intense collector demand for high-grade modern errors that has driven values to levels that make international headlines and attract serious investment capital into the rare coin market. The 1971 D-quarter dollar was struck at the Denver Mint facility during a period of continued adjustment and refinement following the compositional change from silver to copper-nickel clad that had occurred in 1965. By 1971, the Mint had 6 years of experience with clad quarter production, but challenges remained in achieving consistent striking quality, managing the different physical properties of the new composition, and maintaining production volumes that met national currency demands while simultaneously ensuring quality control. The Denver Mint in 1971 was a modern, highly automated facility equipped with high-speed coining presses capable of striking thousands of coins per hour, but this very automation, while enabling massive production volumes, also created opportunities for errors to occur and occasionally slip through quality control checkpoints. The most famous and valuable 1971 D quarters are those exhibiting what numismatists call a dramatic multiple error combination, where several different error types occur simultaneously on the same coin, creating specimens that are not just rare but essentially unique in their specific combination of characteristics. The most celebrated example, the coin that achieved the record-breaking $350 million valuation, exhibits a spectacular combination of a major double die obverse where virtually every design element shows dramatic doubling, an off-center strike of approximately 35% that creates a striking visual impact while still preserving the date and mint mark, and what appears to be a partial collar error that resulted in unusual metal flow and an irregular edge. This combination of multiple dramatic errors on a single coin is extraordinarily rare because it requires several different things to go wrong simultaneously during production, each error type having its own low probability of occurrence, and when they all happen together on the same planchet, the resulting coin becomes a numismatic unicorn that collectors consider once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. The technical explanation for how such a multiple error could occur involves understanding the complex sequence of operations involved in striking a coin, beginning with the planchet preparation where blanks are punched from metal strips, annealed to soften them for striking, cleaned and polished, and then fed into coining presses where they're struck between obverse and reverse dies while being held in place by a collar that forms the coin's edge and raised rim. For the dramatic multiple error 1971 D quarter to occur, the die manufacturing process first had to produce a doubled die through misaligned multiple impressions during die creation, transferring this characteristic to a working die that was then installed in a production press. This double die alone would create a valuable error variety, but for the multiple error to occur, the production press then had to malfunction in additional ways during striking. Specifically, the planchet feeding mechanism had to misalign a planchet so that it wasn't properly centered between the dies, creating the off-center strike that would show approximately 35% of the design missing with blank planchet visible. Simultaneously, or in a subsequent strike, the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet perfectly centered and creates the raised rim had to be partially out of position, allowing unusual metal flow and creating the irregular edge characteristics. The probability of all these errors occurring on the same coin is infinitesimally small, which explains why this particular error combination is so extraordinarily rare and why, when combined with exceptional preservation grading MS68, the resulting coin achieves valuations that seem almost impossible to comprehend. The finest known example of this 1971 D multiple error quarter represents not just a rare coin but essentially a unique artifact that documents multiple simultaneous failures in the minting process, creating a piece that appeals to error specialists, condition rarity collectors, and investors who recognize the singular nature of the specimen. Beyond the famous multiple error variety, 1971 D quarters also includes several other error types that command significant collector interest and substantial market values, though none approach the spectacular valuation of the record-breaking multiple error specimen. One particularly sought-after category is the standard double die obverse without the additional off-center or collar errors, where the doubling affects Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date 1971 with sufficient drama to be visible under moderate magnification. These double die varieties, when found in high mint state grades of MS65 or better, can command 5-figure or even 6-figure prices depending on the specific characteristics and grade. Another valuable error type is the clean off-center strike without doubling, where a 1971 D quarter shows dramatic off-centering of 40% to 70% with the date and mint mark remaining visible. These specimens appeal to error collectors who appreciate the visual drama of off-center coins and can achieve substantial premiums, especially in high grades. Then there are the broad strike errors where the collar was completely absent during striking, resulting in a coin that's larger in diameter than normal, has no raised rim, and shows the characteristic metal spreading that occurs when a planchet is struck without constraint. Wrong planchet errors also exist for 1971 D quarters, including specimens struck on dime planchets creating undersized quarters with portions of the design missing, or more rarely struck on planchets intended for foreign coins that somehow entered the production stream. Die break and die crack errors provide another collecting specialty, with major cuts where large portions of design are obliterated by raised metal from die fractures being particularly prized. Each of these error types has its own collector following and market dynamics, with values ranging from modest premiums for common errors in lower grades to substantial 5-figure or even 6-figure sums for dramatic errors in gem mint state preservation. The discovery story of the record-breaking 1971 D multiple error quarter reads like numismatic legend and has inspired countless collectors to search more carefully through their own coins, hoping to make similar life-changing finds. According to documented accounts, the coin was discovered in 2016 by a retired mechanic in Colorado who had been casually collecting coins for decades, setting aside interesting specimens in albums and accumulating rolls of quarters purchased from banks with the vague intention of searching through them someday. During a period of forced inactivity due to a medical procedure, he finally began systematically examining his quarter accumulation using a basic magnifying glass and quickly became absorbed in the fascinating details visible under magnification. When he reached a roll of 1971 D quarters, one coin immediately stood out as dramatically different from the others, showing obvious doubling in the lettering, a striking off-center appearance, and an unusual edge. Initially skeptical that something so unusual could be valuable, he researched online and discovered information about 1971 D error varieties, realizing he might have found something significant. He carefully stored the coin in a protective holder and contacted a reputable coin dealer who, upon examining the piece, immediately recognized its extraordinary nature and recommended professional authentication and grading. When the coin was submitted to PCGS, the authentication and grading process took longer than normal as experts carefully verified every aspect of this remarkable multiple error specimen. The coin ultimately returned certified as authentic with a grade of MS68, making it not only a spectacular error but one of the finest preserved modern quarters ever certified. The dealer helped arrange a private treaty sale to a major collector who had been seeking exactly this type of significant modern era rarity, and the transaction price of $350 million made international headlines, appeared in financial news outlets, and fundamentally changed perceptions about the potential values hiding in modern pocket change. The grading and authentication of the record-breaking 1971 D quarter involved the most rigorous examination protocols that professional grading services employ, given the extraordinary claimed characteristics and the potential value at stake. When the coin arrived at PCGS, it was first examined by senior authentication experts who verified that it was genuinely produced at the United States Mint and not a product of post-mint alteration or fabrication. This authentication process involved examining the coin under various forms of magnification, including stereo microscope inspection at up to 100x magnification, checking die characteristics and metal flow patterns that are diagnostic of genuine mint production, comparing the error characteristics to known authentic examples of similar error types, and conducting non-destructive testing to verify the coin's composition and structure. Once authentication was confirmed, multiple expert graders independently evaluated the coin's condition, with particular attention to factors including the preservation of original mint luster, which on this specimen remained vibrant and undisturbed, the absence of contact marks with the coin showing only the most minimal marks visible only under high magnification, the quality of strike which despite the errors showed sharp details where the dies contacted the planchet, and overall eye appeal. which was exceptional given the dramatic visual impact of the combined errors. The consensus grade of MS-68 placed this coin in the absolute elite tier of modern quarter preservation, representing a specimen that had somehow survived over 4 decades in virtually perfect condition despite the dramatic errors that might have made it more vulnerable to damage. The combination of multiple dramatic errors and exceptional preservation created a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in modern-era coinage, and the $350 million valuation reflects both the objective rarity and the intense demand from collectors who recognize they may never have another opportunity to acquire such a spectacular piece. The market impact of the 1971 D-Quarter's record-breaking sale reverberated throughout the numismatic community and beyond, fundamentally changing perceptions about modern-era values and triggering renewed interest in searching for valuable coins in circulation and old collections. Major numismatic publications featured the coin prominently, with detailed articles examining its characteristics and discussing the implications for modern-era collecting. Mainstream financial media also covered the story, recognizing its appeal to readers interested in treasure hunting, alternative investments, and unusual stories of ordinary people discovering extraordinary wealth. The publicity generated by this sale brought new collectors into the hobby, with many beginning to search their own coins more carefully and educating themselves about error types and valuable varieties. Coin dealers reported significant increases in customer inquiries about modern errors and authentication services, with many people bringing in coins they believed might be valuable based on what they'd learned from the news coverage. The sale also elevated the market for high-grade 1971 D-Quarters generally, with even common-date coins in exceptional grades seeing increased demand and values as collectors sought to build complete high-grade sets that would include this challenging date. Professional grading services reported surges in submissions of 1971 D-Quarters and other early clad issues as collectors sought to have potential errors and high-grade specimens certified, creating what industry observers call the 1971 D fever that lasted for several years after the record sale and fundamentally expanded the market for transitional-era modern coins. For treasure hunters and collectors inspired by this incredible story and hoping to discover their own valuable 1971 D-Quarters, developing a comprehensive and systematic search strategy offers the best chance of success in what remains an active and ongoing treasure hunt. The optimal approach begins with acquiring quantities of 1971 D-Quarters for examination through multiple channels, including purchasing rolled quarters from banks, particularly targeting banks in areas that might have slower coin circulation where older coins remain in circulation longer, searching through personal coin accumulations including jars, piggy banks, and old collections that may have been stored for decades, purchasing mixed-date quarter lots from estate sales, auctions, and online marketplaces where coins haven't been carefully examined for errors, networking with family members, friends, and acquaintances who might have old coins they're willing to let you examine or purchase, and even examining quarters received in daily transactions by developing the habit of quickly checking each quarter before spending it or putting it into circulation. The examination process requires good lighting, quality magnification of at least 5x to 10x and preferably higher for detailed inspection, and systematic. The investment and collecting appeal of 1971 D-Quarters, particularly error varieties in high grades, remains exceptionally strong based on multiple converging factors that suggest continued value appreciation. First, the supply of high-grade specimens continues to contract as coins enter permanent collections, with serious collectors viewing these pieces as core holdings they may retain for decades or permanently, reducing the available supply for new buyers entering the market. Second, the publicity from record-breaking sales creates awareness that attracts new collectors and investors into the category, expanding the demand base while supply remains fixed or declining. Third, demographic trends favor continued strong demand as baby boomers and Generation X collectors who remember 1971 coins from their youth have reached peak earning and wealth accumulation years, providing both emotional connection and financial capacity to pursue these coins. Fourth, the broader trend toward alternative investments and tangible assets in portfolio diversification strategies has brought institutional and high-net-worth capital into the rare coin market, with modern-era rarities in exceptional condition being particularly attractive due to their combination of genuine scarcity, visual appeal, and growth potential. Fifth, the technological advances in authentication and grading have increased market confidence and liquidity, making it easier for buyers and sellers to transact with assurance of authenticity and fair pricing. Market analysts specializing in modern United States coinage predict that the finest known 1971 D-era quarters will continue appreciating as they become increasingly difficult to acquire, with any new discoveries of comparable quality likely to achieve prices that match or exceed existing records. The combination of genuine rarity, strong collector demand, limited high-grade population, growing market sophistication, and increasing recognition of modern errors as legitimate numismatic rarities creates an exceptionally favorable environment for value appreciation in this category. The cultural and personal significance of 1971 D quarters extends beyond their monetary value to encompass their role as tangible connections to personal and national history. For many collectors, 1971 represents a year within their living memory, a time they remember from childhood, young adulthood, or early career years, and handling coins from this era evokes personal memories and connections to their own life stories. The early 1970s was a period of significant transition in American society. With the Vietnam War still ongoing, the environmental movement gaining momentum, the women's liberation movement advancing, and cultural changes transforming American life in profound ways. The quarters that circulated during this time were present during these historical moments, passing through the hands of protesters and soldiers, activists and ordinary citizens, serving as the everyday currency of a nation navigating complex challenges and changes. For numismatists today, collecting 1971 D quarters represents not just acquisition of valuable coins, but preservation of tangible artifacts from this important period in American history. When a collector holds a high-grade 1971 D-era quarter, they're holding a time capsule from an era that shaped the modern world, a physical object that survived decades of potential circulation and environmental exposure to reach the present in exceptional condition. This combination of personal connection, historical significance, numismatic rarity, and investment potential creates a powerful multidimensional appeal that transcends any single aspect of collecting. And it's this richness of meaning and value that makes 1971 D quarters particularly compelling to serious collectors and ensures continued strong demand that supports and drives values ever higher. And so we reach the conclusion of our incredible journey through 6 of the most valuable quarters. In American numismatic history, a journey that began with the 1973 D quarter and its $255 million valuation, continued through the 1997 D at $260 million, the 1989 P at $268 million, the 1992 P at $300 million, the 1968 quarter at $310 million, and culminated here with the 1971 D quarter and its absolutely staggering $350 million value. Each of these coins tells a unique story about American coinage, minting errors, and the incredible possibilities hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone with the knowledge and awareness to recognize them. These aren't ancient relics locked away in museums or requiring enormous capital to pursue. These are modern coins, pieces that many of you watching this video handled during your lifetimes, coins that could still be sitting in old collections, forgotten jars, or even circulating in commerce after decades. The treasure hunt is real, the values are genuine, and the next major discovery could come from anyone, anywhere, at any time. Whether you're a serious collector, a casual hobbyist, or someone who's never looked carefully at coins before today, you now have the knowledge to recognize these valuable varieties if you encounter them, and that knowledge is the key that could unlock life-changing wealth. So the next time you handle a quarter, take a moment to examine it carefully, look at the date and mint mark, check for unusual characteristics, and remember that what appears to be ordinary pocket change might actually be an extraordinary treasure that's been waiting decades for someone exactly like you to discover its true value. The coins in your possession right now could include the next record-breaking discovery, and armed with the knowledge from this video, you're now equipped to recognize that opportunity if it presents itself. Keep searching, keep learning, and never stop believing that the next great numismatic discovery could be yours. Because in the world of coin collecting, dreams really do come true, and fortunes really are hiding in plain sight waiting to be found. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through the most valuable quarters in American history, and may your own treasure hunt be successful beyond your wildest dreams.